Hello everyone, this is Mehdi and welcome to another episode of the Subcontinent. Our program aims to address important issues in the subcontinent which affect the governments, people, organizations and the region as a whole. We will try to explain the issues, break down controversies surrounding them and try to have some external perspectives from experts and people. In this edition of the Subcontinent, we are going to discuss the negative and at times hateful representation or stereotyping of subcontinental ethnicities, religions and traditional roots in the Western mass media. And we will try to dissect the factors perpetuating such deep misconceptions throughout the Western culture and societies. In today's world, we are greatly influenced by what we read and watch in media. Most of the people learn about the cultures of the world through their representations in different types of media productions they consume. But what do you do if media companies or outlets, especially those with the greatest number of audiences, try to show a small sliver of the complex realities of a culture or country? Like many other ethnicities or cultures, Indians are victims of negative or hateful stereotyping, particularly in Western media productions.
Exchange of information has never been this easy throughout the human history, but like any other feats of human advancement, this comes with its own caveats. Today, most of the people learn about the world from media, which is filled with cases of misrepresentation and false news. And the prejudice against Indians or the subcontinental culture in general has been manifesting itself in many ways, from insults on social media to bigoted remarks by high-ranking officials or authorities. No matter where they live, modern human beings rely heavily on what the media show and tell them about the current global affairs. But India's image in media is sometimes far from the truth. People, especially in Western countries, associate India with all the clichés and stereotypes that their media firms are feeding them, which is vastly dominated by stories about environmental or social problems such as poverty, drought, heat or pollution.
A negative stereotype is a label that purports to describe the undesirable, objectionable or unacceptable qualities and characteristics of the members of a particular group or social category. Stereotypes may have some truth in their kernels, but they may never represent an accurate picture. One may think that people are not as likely to be typecast by their looks, accents or ethnicities as they once were. But some of these negative and untrue representations about the subcontinent are sunken to the collective consciousness of Westerners, because these are all they are hearing from India.
The human mind is riddled with a lot of biases that can mess up its perception of the world. Some of these biases fit best the propaganda of many media companies that know and sometimes manipulate their audience through them. Confirmation and selection biases make people resonate with the ideas they know as prior knowledge, so it is natural for people to look for the information that confirm their pre-existing presumptions about something, even if these assumptions are narrow or all-out wrong. This is how Western media make their mark. Audiences pay attention to stories that confirm their prior beliefs. Therefore, they select and repeat stories that portray the subcontinent in a way that serves their agenda. The general audience who are not exposed to the current affairs in the subcontinent may not be able to fathom the linguistic, ethnic, religious and cultural diversity of this vast area. Building up the expertise to understand the Indian subcontinent cannot happen overnight. Even Indians themselves can't claim that they know everything about their culture, let alone foreign reporters or media producers who only spend some time there and think they've seen it all.
The subcontinental history is marred with myriads of atrocities by Western and European colonialists during the British Raj, a period of direct British rule over the Indian subcontinent from 1858 until the independence of India and Pakistan in 1947. In 1700, India was the world's richest country, accounting for some 27% of the global GDP. But in 1947, when India achieved its independence, India had been reduced to one of the world's poorest countries with just over 3% of global GDP. During this period, the British decimated the Indian economy and culture. The British took thriving industries like textiles, shipbuilding and steel and destroyed them through violence, taxes and import tariffs, as well as imposing their exports and products. Yet, they still seem to dislike the Indians and their culture.
Although imperialist powers have a long history of subjugating the Indian subcontinent, most people in the so-called First World countries don't know a lot about its people and cultures. Lack of knowledge did not make them curious to know the peculiarities of this land and its habitats, but it solidified a wide range of misconceptions that were hugely intensified by the West-centric media. A recent study performed in the UK indicates that about 80% of British Indians have faced prejudice because of their Indian identity. Recently, a motion has been tabled in the UK Parliament condemning the rise in anti-Indian racism in the country. Moreover, a petition went viral online against an Oxford University faculty member for his racist and Hindu-phobic remarks against the first female Indian student to be elected as the university's union president. Negative stereotypes represent negative expectations about the outgroup, aggravating the predominant xenophobia or the us and them dichotomy that is etched in the primal parts of human brain. In the human brain, the prefrontal neocortex is the largest part of the cerebral cortex and is implicated in higher-order thinking and decision-making. Humans have evolved to go beyond their animalistic genes, but repetition of negative stereotyping mixed with misogyny, sexism, racism and other biases have limited the worldview and cognitive orientation of many Western communities about the subcontinental identity.
The Indian subcontinent is a diverse, multi-ethnic area that is home to thousands of small ethnic and tribal groups. Considering its large population, the scale of everything is huge there. So it doesn't seem difficult to find instances of every kind of stories and characters. However, what you see most in media are not the success stories of myriads of Indian scientists or entrepreneurs, but a hackneyed depiction of poverty or sexual violence.
Diversities are a reason the world has thrived, and no society can ever flourish unless it values and respects such differences. However, the Western culture can't stand a planet with balanced view about different cultures and people. Their view of the world is tinted with a sense of superiority and cannot see people as equal. Thus, they try to project their own stereotypical portrayals about others with selective reporting and negative cliches. Given the variegated palette of cultural identities, understanding the complexities of the subcontinent and its current issues of public discourse looks extra perplexing for Western media companies. But the key factor behind their narrow and reductionist view about the Indian subcontinent is their political agendas. They focus on violence against women, Bollywood celebrities, odd incidents, or exotic animals to reinforce such stereotypes to make their audience believe this is all that is happening there. Then when independent journalists or alternative media outlets provide the needed context, reveal their hand and criticize their dishonest representation, they play the freedom of speech card. Negative stereotypes are perpetuated as long as the majority of media is controlled by a few imperialist countries or corporates that benefit from more tribalism and xenophobia.
Now, to have more insight, we are joined by Paranjoy Guha Takota, an Indian journalist, writer and a documentary maker. First of all, welcome to the program, Mr. Takota. I wanted to begin by saying Indians, unfortunately, like many other ethnicities or cultures, are victims of negative stereotyping or even hate crimes. Now, what do you think are the reasons or factors behind it?
Negative stereotyping, hate crimes are on the rise across the world. Because despite economic quote-unquote progress, people's outlook and their social outlook and their minds and their attitudes have not widened. So Indians, Asians, minorities across the world, they face negative stereotyping, and on occasions this culminates in mob lynching and hate crime. In other parts of the world, we see Indians, irrespective of their religion, being stereotyped. But within India, though Hindus account for 80% of the population of India, we see Muslims being stereotyped. And we see Islamophobia, which is on the rise. And although 1 out of 7 Indians is Muslim, and there are more Muslims in India than in all countries in the world except one, and that is Indonesia, we see this kind of stereotyping of Muslims, just as we see in other parts of the world, in say the United Kingdom and other countries like that, Indians being stereotyped. They put all Indians in one category, whereas India is an extremely diverse country. India is the only country in the world with 17 languages on its currency note, excluding the language with which I'm conversing with you right now. It has 21 languages that can be used for official purposes. They are in the 8th schedule of the Constitution of India. But despite the diversity, the cultural diversity, the social diversity, everybody tends to put all 1.35 or 1.4 billions into one category. Many people across the world don't know the difference between Hindi, which is a language, and Hindu, which is a religion. So these kind of stereotypes are happening across the world, and certainly in India, it's also happening.
A recent study says 80% of British Indians have faced prejudice because of their Indian identity, and even a motion that has been tabled in the UK Parliament condemning the rise in anti-Indian racism in the country. Now, my question has 2 parts: why the British don't like Indians, and what can be done about it?
I should not say that British don't like Indians and Indians don't like British. There's a section. There's a section in Britain that still perhaps are not reconciled, that Britain is no longer ruling over India, that India is no longer a colony. Today, Indians are, including members of parliament, are asking for reparations, compensation for colonial rule. Now that has also aroused a lot of anger and agitation. But the fact is, if you look at the government, of Boris Johnson, and you'll find large numbers, a fairly substantial number of persons of Asian origin who are holding important positions. So yes, the stereotyping and the negative sort of stereotyping continues. But as I was mentioning earlier, this is happening despite so-called economic development. And when economies across the world there's been a downturn after the pandemic, after the corona pandemic, when the economy is in a bad shape, when unemployment is on the rise, when there are not enough jobs, these kinds of stereotyping, they take place. I mean, there are more and more people who take comfort or get this kind of very perverse kind of comfort in stereotyping. Maybe the word comfort is not the right word, but they have been indoctrinated and brainwashed into believing that their problems are because of the other. And when you say the other, the enemy, you tend to focus on minorities, you tend to focus on people whose color of their skin is different from yours. And we see this happening across the world, and it's not just in the United Kingdom. We've seen it happening the United States, and we saw the reaction, the Black Lives Matter movement. We see this across the world. We see this particularly in countries which are ruled by right-wing demagogues. So at one level, this is a phenomenon, it's a global phenomenon.
Thank you, Mr. Thakurta. Now let's take a look at how the global media talk about the negative profiling of the subcontinental culture.
Indian misrepresentation in media has been prevalent since Indian characters emerged in American entertainment. Indians have constantly been inaccurately represented in TV shows and movies, further contributing to false images about their personalities and culture. Redefining the stereotypes Indians have become subject to is the only way Indians will begin to feel like their culture is respected. Language is a powerful medium through which unconscious bias and prejudice against certain nationalities is reinforced. Research shows that jokes which rely on stereotypes towards certain groups and communities create a climate where discrimination is normalized, shifting the social milestones for what constitutes racism and xenophobia. People must address this normalized language and understand the impact that unconscious biases have if we want to live in a country which is equal and fair, and where people like me are not judged or ridiculed based on the color of our skin. Abhijit Sarkar, an Oxford University faculty who had unleashed the Hindu-phobic attack against Rashmi Samant, the first female Indian student to be elected as president of the Oxford University Students' Union, is now facing the heat from netizens. An online petition against Abhijit Sarkar has gone viral on Twitter. The petition demands that Oxford University should investigate Abhijit Sarkar's nasty demeanour on social media and suspend him till the investigations are done. The British national curriculum needs to better educate students on colonial history and its impact. Setting up a task force to understand the impacts of colonialism on modern Britain is a necessary first step. Indian languages should be offered as an option at schools, particularly given India's economic growth. This would be similar to how Mandarin is offered in many schools. There should be more opportunities for adults to learn Indian languages, to connect with their heritage, and to act as a living bridge between the two countries.
Sorry for the wait, Mr. Thakurta. As you know, a petition has gone viral online against an Oxford University faculty member for his racist and Hindu-phobic remarks against the first female Indian student to be elected as the university's union president. Now, do you believe such campaigns can reduce racial attacks?
The recent comments that have been made against the first female student of Indian origin who was elected as the president of the union in Oxford University just indicates that these racist tendencies and the colonial mindset has not disappeared, even from persons who you would consider to be educated. You believe that education, especially education in a reputed educational institution, in a reputed university, would make your mind a little broader. That you would be not just tolerant, you wouldn't be negatively stereotyping persons who don't look like you, who don't come from, whose origins are different from yours, whose ethnic background is different from yours, who may not speak English in the same language, in the same accent that you do, whose color of skin, the color of that person's skin may be different. But you find that this strong colonial mindset and racist attitudes are prevalent and strong, even in persons you would consider, quote unquote, educated. And that's most unfortunate, but it's true.
Today, prejudice against Indians manifests itself in many ways through insults on social media and even bigoted remarks in Western mainstream or printed media. So who is responsible and what actions should be made?
The ease of transmitting information, distributing information on the social media has made the social media a classic double-edged sword that cuts both ways. Most people are addicted to the social media because it provides them a lot of information, it provides them entertainment, it enables them to contact people they wish to contact, their families, their friends, their professional colleagues. But at the same time, that sword has two edges, and the deep and the dark side of the social media and the internet is that it is used to disseminate hateful, fake, false, negative stereotypes of different groups and different sections of society, often minorities and underprivileged sections. And this has been on the rise in India, and I guess in many, many other parts of the world, many other countries in the world. So in countries where laws exist, these laws should be strictly implemented. The law enforcing agencies should take stern action and advance action before hateful speech escalates into violence. So that is not easy, I agree. The law enforcing agencies have a difficult task ahead of them. End-to-end encryption, like that's what is provided by a messaging platform like WhatsApp. Again, you can say it protects your privacy, it safeguards freedom of expression, but there's the other side of the story. Freedom of expression is not the freedom to propagate hate. Freedom of expression does not mean that you can say something which is not just hateful, but which is incendiary, which incites violence in people. So, whereas in the Indian Constitution, the right to free expression is a fundamental right given to every citizen. There is also Article 19(2), which imposes what are called reasonable restrictions on the right to free speech. The problem is this word reasonable. Who decides what is reasonable? And that leaves for a lot of scope for arbitrary interpretation of the rules and the laws. I think all countries in the world should implement laws which act against those who spread hate speech.
On that note, I would like to thank Mr. Takota for his precious time and knowledge. And now, let's take a look at people's opinion on this matter on social media and cyberspace.
Politics of Envy believes the Hinduphobia in the UK is mixed with the Islamophobia, and these problems cannot be resolved in isolation. Anubis has talked about the high rates of Hinduphobia in Germany, suggesting that German media outlets should employ more Indian writers or journalists. Sai Swarupa has talked a lot about the Hinduphobia in the mainstream media. She points out that in every major global development, the Western media tries to project that India is on the wrong side. Abish Banerjee is a stern critic of Indian liberals. He says they are somehow highlighting the Hinduphobia to downgrade the rise of India as a country.
And that was our episode on the negative stereotyping of the subcontinental identity in the Western media and culture. To watch bits and pieces of our show and more subcontinental updates, follow us on social media platforms and don't forget to give us your feedback. We shall meet again, same time, same day next week. So till then, take care.